Okay, so so far we have been discussing the karma yoga segment and the bhakti yoga part. So that covers 12 chapters out of from the 12 chapters we discussed from 18 chapters, 18 verses from the first 6 chapters which constitute the karma yoga. Another 18 verses from the bhakti segment, which is from chapter 7 to chapter 12. The summary is capturing the essence of karma yoga and bhakti yoga. From today onwards, we are going to now discuss the knowledge part of it. So while the karma yoga was discussing action part, that is what how we practice the knowledge in our daily actions is basically what karma yoga is all about, which is about selflessness. And what is selflessness? These are all single terms which actually are very easy to actually to hear. But then, what is selflessness? The details of how you practically practice, or how you practice selflessness in daily life is basically what is discussed in the 200 plus verses of the Karma Yoga. That selflessness is rooted in nothing but yajna bhava. That is the single most important knowledge that we actually gather from the Karma Yoga. Yajna bhava, the attitude of yajna or the attitude of sacrifice. So attitude of sacrifice personifies the whole concept of Karma Yoga. But again, that attitude of sacrifice is also just three words. But to really comprehend it, Arjuna needed details, and Krishna gave those details. So those 200 plus verses in the karma segment are nothing but the details of how you practice this in daily action. That, if you actually slightly more elaborate it, the attitude of selflessness or attitude of sacrifice is what? The attitude of coexistence and expansion. How do you coexist? And how do you expand at the same time? So this coexistence and expansion are the fundamental powers of selflessness that actually resonate within this world, having emanated from the root, which is Brahman, the infinitude. So infinitude, what do you mean by infinitude? Infinitude means raising our mind to the level of selflessness, of coexistence and expansion in all our thoughts and actions. Can we do that? If we do that, then we have expanded to infinitude in our actions, through our actions. Coexistence and expansion. Now, the rest of the details in the Karma Yoga were translated into practical terms in this modern day world in terms of how you actually translate the power of coexistence into the various aspects of our day-to-day transactions in the working world, in the working society, in the working family, etc. In terms of, we looked at how do you take initiatives, how do you become a star follower or take ownership, how do you communicate with each other, collaborate with the teams, how do you develop your perspectives by acquiring knowledge. The actions that you carry out should expand your perspectives. And ultimately, it is all about managing your own self. The moment you get up from bed to the moment you go back to bed, all day, how do you manage yourself such that constantly you are reminded of the values of coexistence and expansion, and you look out for opportunities to translate that concept into action plans in the working world. That is what Karma Yoga is, and all the details, yajna, tyaga, samarpana, prasada, bhavas, etc. We exploded that into granular details so that we can understand that and we can come to grips with the concept and then apply it to available situations in our society, in our day-to-day living. That was Karma Yoga. And then, okay, acting in this world selflessly is one thing. Now, what is the motivation that powers you to be selfless? That is something from the inside. That has to come from the inside. The inner power, the inner aspirations that drive you to selflessness is basically what is defined as the bhakti aspect. So refining your mind's attitudes such that it is constantly powered by this inner thrust from within, which is Atma Tripti. So how do you attain Atma Tripti? And how do you prepare yourself for Atma Tripti? How do you develop Atma Tripti in stages? And ultimately you reach that stage where you become an inspiring personality. Not only inspired, but self-inspired, but also inspiring others. That characteristics, the characteristics that define your inspired personality is basically what is described in verses 12:13 to 12:19, those 7 verses at the end of Bhakti Yoga, 12th chapter, which defines that bhakti, the characteristics of a bhakta. And that you can achieve only if you actually start understanding what your inner power is, the self is, the Atman is. That Atman is universal, and that Atman is imperishable, that Atman is infinite. These 3 characteristics of universality, imperishability, and infinitude is described in chapters 7, 8, and 9 in no unmistakable terms, very scientifically and elaborately, so that you can connect with the concept of the self becoming universal, imperishable, and infinite. The moment you realize, the moment you have faith, start having faith. Faith is what? Belief systems combined with knowledge. That belief system combined with knowledge is developed by these explanations in chapter 7, 8, and 9, which takes you to that situation where you will start looking around and you will see sparks of this divinity, the infinitude everywhere in excellence. That is Vibhuti Yoga, chapter 10. And that, with that, completes your inner expansion so that you've developed that infinite vision or multidimensional perspective of the infinitude. That is the Vishwarupa Darshanam, which is described in chapter 11. And ultimately, the process and the establishment of the character of bhakti is defined in Bhakti Yoga, chapter 2, chapter 12. So we have these 12 chapters that covered the, the way your thought process is articulated into actions as selflessness, and the firepower, the motivation, which is the inspiration of the self or the joys of the inner self that drives such a personality to a state of bhakti. So now the thing is, that is how we have to exist in this world. That is how we work in this world. Doesn't mean that constantly, if you are always in the lookout for these things and then working and living in this world in such a fashion such that you become some kind of a machine or something, or on the other extreme, a kind of sannyasin who just leaves everything and goes away. No, it is not like that. A real sannyasin is active in this world. Is active in this world such that he is able to renounce the pleasures, the attractions of pleasures, egoistic attachments, selfishness, etc., and work towards the betterment of this world, driven by the concept of coexistence and expansion. So, does it mean that all of us are perfect and can reach that state immediately? No, it is a very difficult process. It is a lifelong process. An incremental growth. Every day, bettering yourself, doing better than yesterday. Doing better than yesterday is the motive that we should have. And we keep incrementally refining ourselves to that kind of a state. Now, for all this, there are finer aspects, finer knowledge sets that are required, which can actually help you to understand the nuances of this work and devotion aspects. For that, you need to have a subtle intellect, an intellect that is able to differentiate between what is good and what is pleasant. The power to differentiate between what is good and what is pleasant is called as viveka. And this viveka can only be achieved through the capacity to differentiate the good versus the pleasant. And whenever we are faced with challenges, situations, if we are able to take a step back and able to differentiate between what is good and what is pleasant, and use our intellect, the subtle intellect, to guide our gross intellect, which is to guide our knowledge of the world, the knowledge of the relationships, knowledge of our teams, organizations, society, family, etc., and all the things that we see outside the universe. If we are able to correlate the value systems of coexistence and expansion and map it to the daily world in such a fashion that your thoughts and actions now become karma yoga and bhakti yoga combined. That is made possible only through the acquisition of the detailed knowledge about some aspects which Arjuna wanted to clarify with Krishna. Therefore, chapters 13 to chapter 18 were born, where Krishna was able to actually expand some of those aspects in detail, further details. That therefore constitute the Jnana Yoga segment, which is nothing but this karma and bhakti yoga that we have already seen being looked at through the lens of a finer, what you call, granularity. That is jnana. This differentiation, which is called as vibhaga, differentiation, vibhaga, the process of vibhaga, differentiating, splitting out and seeing the grains separately. Vibhaga. Therefore, you can see chapter 13 to 18, most of these chapters are named Vibhaga Yoga. The 13th chapter, the first of which that we are going to look at today is Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. The next will be Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. So on and so forth, we'll see that. But today, Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga is the focus. So I have taken 4 verses from the chapter 13, which form the crux of the knowledge, and we will try to explore that in minute detail as much as possible in practical terms and see an overview of that knowledge. Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, the differentiation between Kshetra and Kshetrajna, so that we understand that clearly and we become united with that knowledge. Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. Our intellect, our mind, our gross intellect now gets unified with the subtle knowledge of Kshetra and Kshetrajna. That is called as Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, through the process of differentiating what is Kshetra and what is Kshetrajna. So that's basically what we are going to look at. 4 verses are being taken, and these 4 verses summarize some points which are about that. The knowledge actually tells you that the body is the Kshetra. For us, the body, the physical body is the Kshetra. The self, the Atman within us is the knower. Understanding what is Kshetra, the body, what forms our body, and what forms the Atman is the real knowledge that we needed to assimilate. And we will understand that the self is the light of all lights within us. And the light of all lights within us, how does it reflect? It reflects from within our bosom and helps us to create memories, digestive systems, metabolic powers, capabilities, and the power to infer and make knowledge, the powers. That is how the infinitude gets translated within us as the powers seated in our hearts. We must then understand that the way we do things, the nature, all of us do things differently. The way we do that flavor of the ways in which we do things is actually is controlled by the cause-effect relationship. This cause-effect relationship, therefore, is because of this nature. And this is only a summary. Let's look at that in detail a bit later. Then it is okay. We differentiate the way we do things. Therefore, we have several effects. We create several effects. The effects created by Anandji and the effects created by Sribalji, etc., will be different. So why is it possible? Because there are certain causes because that create these effects, these different effects. And while creating these effects, that particular person, for example, if Anandji is creating certain effects through his thoughts and actions, because of certain causes, cause-effect relationship is bound within him and with everybody else, like, in this whole universe is also like that, those effects are because of the characteristics of his own body, mind, and intellect. That is the nature. That forms the nature. The characteristics of the body, mind, and intellect is what is called as nature. And that nature is what creates cause and effect. It is not the Atman that creates the cause and effect. The effects and the cause relationships are created by the nature of things in this world. But while that is going on, this cause to effect translation is taking place through a process, the details of which we will see, very soon now, within a few minutes. There is an internal process that takes place, which is helping us to articulate the effect from the causes. And that is because there is this life force that is flowing through our body. Every cell of our body is energized and life is pulsating through us. And this power that is pulsating through us is energizing this nature, the elements of nature. And while it is doing so, it is imparting a kind of sensation to the mind and the senses. That is what is called as the experiences. So we experience, for example, pleasure, we experience anger, we experience satisfaction, fulfillment, or sometimes we are disappointment, etc. All those things happen because of that, because the mind is now getting affected by certain kind of experiences. So, and this is happening because the life force is pulsating through within us. Therefore, self, the Atman that is energizing the body, is helping us to experience these things through a kind of process that is taking place within us. In the human being, there are several processes that are taking place. When we think about something, we are able to actually connect with our previous memories stored within our mind, the memories as experiences and factual information. And then we are also able to connect with the outside world through the senses. We see things, we see new things, we see a particular thing that we already know, etc. That object's information comes within us, and the mind is now able to connect with the memories and experiences, and then it is able to make some inferences, etc. So you can see these are all pulsations within us. Physical, chemical, biological processes helping us to actually think, integrate memories, and make judgments, etc. So memories, experiences, judgments are all experiences within us. Memories, judgments, and the visuals that we see are all experiences within us. There is nothing outside. Everything is within us. We see an elephant and we are afraid. The elephant is outside, fine, but the experiences are right within us. The fear, the shape of the elephant, the memories of an elephant, the characteristics of an elephant, the fact that the elephant is 5,000 pounds or whatever, and that it can crush me, etc. All those things are happening within me, the experiences. These experiences within me is made possible. How? Because of the force of life pulsating through every cell within our body. that Atma Tattvam, which is pulsating us. So self is the experiencer, Kshetrajna, the knower. Whereas the body, the physical body, constituted of the organs and the physical skin and other things, all of these karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, the mind and all those things. The physical mind meaning the substrate of the mind, which is the brain. So all those things are physical things. And the characteristics of that creates some effects. But that has to be first kindled. And that kindling process is through the Atma Tattva, who is the Kshetrajna, the knower. The physical body and the apparatus, physical apparatus being the Kshetra. So nature creates the cause-effect relations, and the self gives us the experiences of pleasure and pain. Nature is our form giver. Kshetra is our form giver. And self, Kshetrajna, is the life giver. In fact, one of the things that fundamentally people go wrong, in very simple terms, I will explain, which is, Kshetrajna is different from the real, actually, what you call the Atman or the self. Or the Atman is nothing but Brahman. Brahman is equal to Atman. Same. That is completely different from the Kshetrajna, because that Atman does not have any qualities or characteristics. It is a pure present power, energy, Shivam. It is pure energy, Shivam. That Shivam, when it energizes the molecules of life, physics, the physical things, chemical, biological energies start flowing through the physical medium. And when that is, therefore, this Atman, when it combines with the physical apparatus, it provides for a flow of separate energies. Atman is pure energy. That pure energy now splits into different kinds of energies. Digestive energy, power of memory, power of inferences, power of metabolism, and all those things are energies that are differentiated, split into, one energy split into different energies. That different energies provide the experiences for us. So the Atman combined with the physical, when it is physically entrapped within a body, it becomes different energies within us, within that medium, depending on what the medium is. In a plant medium, it will function differently. In a human medium, it will function differently. That's it. That combined thing is Kshetrajna. That process plus that power is the Kshetrajna. And where is it working? In the body, in the physical things. That is the Kshetra. So you can see Kshetra, Atman, Kshetrajna, and Kshetra. Three things. So these three concepts we should actually be very clear. And if we are, then we will be able to start seeing the self within us. And then only we will be able to see the self within us. That is the reason why Krishna is spending some time to show us the differentiation between Kshetrajna and Kshetra. So this is basically, and we should also understand that it is the nature, the characteristics of the physical things, the nature, that is binding the self to the body. And when the Atman is bound to the body, thus, within that physical medium, there is a set of energies that are flowering with giving us the experiences and affecting the Kshetra, making changes within that physical being. And also the way the physical being interacts with the outside world. Okay, I hope that is very clear. Okay. Let's go out and see a little bit more in detail with some infographics that will actually, entrench this knowledge within our psyche. So the four verses. In summary, it is mentioned here. This body is Kshetra. He who considers it as me and mine is Kshetrajna. So just imagine this body, that is Kshetra, and there is some power within me, power which is within me, which is making me feel that this is me and these experiences are mine. Okay, that is Kshetrajna. The next verse is self is the knower everywhere. This self is the knower everywhere, in your body, in my body, in the body of a dog, in the plant, etc. Everywhere that power, the outside power is the same. And the differentiating power which gives me the differentiation between the Kshetrajna and the Kshetra is called as the real knowledge. These are all fundamental definitions, which has to be elaborated. And that's basically what I'm trying to do at the moment. I'm just reading out those essence of that for those 4 verses. And the third one is the self is, what does it summarize as? Jyotisham abhi tejodhi. The self is the light of all lights. The light of all lights, in the sense that when we have, if suppose we know something, what we normally we also use now icons, a bulb. An idea strikes, we show it as a bulb, light. So that idea is a light outside way. That idea gives light outside, right? Isn't it? In the sense we understand something, we create or do something, and therefore it spreads the effect of it. So it is spreading light. Apart from that, the lighting up of the idea within me gives a kind of knowledge, the light of knowledge within me inside me also there is an effect of light, and that light is what creates the light outside. Correct? In every bit of knowledge that we learn, when we understand something, that is the light inside, and when we actually start doing something based using that knowledge, it is light outside. In the sense we are spreading the effect outside. So the light of the light, that is, and that light, where does it come from? It comes from the outside. The energy, the self, everywhere, which is in you, in me, everywhere. The only problem is that light, if it energizes my mind, if my mind has limitations, I will not understand certain things. But when, let's say, Sangeeta, her mind, that physical apparatus has got certain strengths, therefore that power which is going through that will make her understand that. So some people understand certain things, some people do not understand certain things. That is all. It is not because of self, it is because of the nature that this differentiation occurs. Self is therefore all knowledge. All knowledge is there in the self. That is what our Vedas, Upanishads say. Because, why is it that it doesn't mean, physically you should not interpret it as the self and all knowledge is inside. It is not, it is, I will explain the conceptual knowledge of that through, what is written in Mandukya Upanishad and Kena Upanishad, which I have discussed in the WhatsApp group also. When the life energy first enters a physical entity, when does that happen in scientific terms? If you look at it, it happens within that embryo that is within the mother's womb. In fact, it is said, science has also said that embryo becomes a separate identity sometime around 4th or 5th or 6th week, around that time. Why is it happening is that the energy, the cells from the body, within the body of the mother, combined with the cells from the father, combine and then start splitting and becoming an entity through the process of, that development of the embryo, which is a natural process. And of course, there are lots of, maybe evolution and all those things play a lot of trick on those things, the way it is expressing. Okay, let's not go into that. So this, at the 4th or 6th week, is identified as a separate entity. Why? Because the brain cells have started developing, and when the set of a few millions of them, when it forms into few billions, gets into that kind of a number, there is the energy that is trapped within those millions of cells interact with each other and then starts creating something called as prajna. That is how Vedas describe. Prajna is the term that is given. This prajna is very specialized prajna. When we simply say consciousness, it doesn't really express that. It is much more complex, or much more refined description of that is what is called as prajna. So if we understand in our normal terms, in our limited terminologies, it is called as that prajna, that consciousness is not outward bound. It doesn't know anything that is outside. It doesn't know, in the sense that consciousness is directed to itself, within itself. Therefore, it is called as involuted consciousness, a consciousness that is pointing to itself. That is how it comes initially. And this power, involuted consciousness, is also not differentiated in the sense that it is one single monolithic consciousness. So, monolithic, involuted, monolithic, one piece, involuted consciousness. That is what is called as prajna. That is the difference. Monolithic, involuted consciousness. That is prajna. That is how every one of us becomes separate entities. We are able to, all of us, we are able to trap this, or to not trap and all is a negative term. I would say we are all able to encapsulate this in consciousness in a form which is monolithic, single piece, and involuted, inward looking, nothing outside. That is how it is. But what happens is, it cannot remain so, because it is getting connected to different more cells that are forming for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 13 weeks, or what, 15 weeks, 20 weeks, 40 weeks. During the whole process, what is happening, more and more cells are getting formed and joined together, which is these form muscles, nerves, and the senses and sense organs, all those things. And this consciousness start leaking. Consciousness then now starts leaking through these things that are getting connected to it. And the consciousness now starts expanding outward, in the sense its involuteness, pointing inwardness, becomes slowly ruptured, and it starts pointing outward through the senses. And then we, the outside people, we start looking at it as the expansion of consciousness. In the terms of, we are expanding the awareness of the physical world in which we are living at that point in time within the womb, and then gets out, and then also what we interact with the senses, and we expand. We start, inputs start coming from the outside, and then it enters. So that now look at that involuted consciousness. The first prajna, look at the prajna. What is the capacity or the capability of prajna? It is the prajna that is enabling us to open up and look outside, and then gather everything from outside, and then open up our knowledge, isn't it? The awareness that we have is because of that involuted consciousness connecting into the senses, the mind and the senses. And we are able to gather knowledge, outside knowledge. Not only outside knowledge, we are also able to think intuitively. We are also able to connect with the highest amount of wisdom. So intuitive knowledge as well as extrinsic knowledge, both this window of knowledge was able to provide us. Therefore, in Mandukya Upanishad, this prajna is called as the window to all knowledge. Anything that you can understand, anything that you can think about, anything that you can intuit, intuition and sense and understand, awareness, intuition and awareness, both are opening up just because of this window of knowledge that we have, which is called as prajna, which was blessed for us, which was blessedly given to us by this process. Every one of us, everyone, each individual here, each individual in the world, wherever we see, Yes, yes, it has got, when it starts as a separate entity, it is blessed with this prajna. Even insects and animals, birds and dogs and plants have this prajna at the first starting point. That prajna can now actually express itself only through the apparatus that it is given. I hope you can understand that, right? The prajna can only express through that device. Therefore, dogs behave differently from plants. And each individual, each human being differently. Because what is there in that physical thing that is unfolding is what decides the cause-effect relationships. That is the understanding. So you can imagine all the prajna within us as the window to all knowledge, but getting limited by the mind and the senses that each one of us are blessed with. Now, so the question comes, okay, then that means, we should all believe in fate and then destiny and all those things, and said, okay, we are provided, we cannot do anything, isn't it? No, that is the beautiful part of it, is that human beings are blessed with the capacity to change the matter, change the kshetra. Human beings alone have the capacity to alter the kshetra through the power of mind. So knowledge can be expanded, both gross as well as subtle. Subtle knowledge plus gross knowledge, both can be expanded in the mind of human beings, and therefore the person can make changes. This is what is the faith that we need to develop. This is what was told in 7th, 8th, and 9th chapters of the Bhagavad-Gita, so that your belief systems now start having faith in the power of that self, the prajna, which is available to us as prajna. That is the wonderful power, energy that we need to tap. It gives us the power to know. It gives us the power to set goals and the power to work towards reaching that goal. That power is all seated in our within the bosom, the heart. Heart meaning not the pulse, the heart, physical heart that we talk about normally. When you say heart, that is the essence of the human being. Self is the essence of us, each one of us, which actually translates into the energies of memory, forgetfulness, power to infer, power to digest, and the power to nourish. That is 1318. And then finally this chapter summarizes that cause effect is because of nature, and experiences because of the self. So this is basically what. Now we can look at that in a little bit more detail. Kshetra is that which protects the kshetra. Is that which protects protect in the sense that it is that which houses the self. Kshetra. Kshetra is that, you look at the temples and other things, as simple analogies. The Sri Govil, inside which resides the Brahman, the idol. The Sri Govil is the first protection, and the Sri Govil, also the Sri Govil, and then there is the Pradakshana Krama, the inner circumambulatory path, and then there is the structure that actually houses all the illuminations and other things, and then comes the outer circumambulatory path, and then comes the wall. Every temple has got these things. The kshetra, that is the kshetra. And within the, where is that the idol, the Ishvara, the power residing? Right inside, deep inside. So that which protects the idol is the kshetra, that way, in a physical analogy. And that is why it is also called as kshetra. Actually, it is the other way. We call the Upanishads call this kshetra not because of the temple, but we call the temple kshetra because of this knowledge. Okay, so that's the other way. That's how it is. And this kshetra is perishable. Kshetra is perishable. You can build the walls of the temple once again, if demolished and people can demolish or people can build it. The circumambulatory path can now be covered, and most temples in Kerala and all are covered now, so that, you know, earlier on it used to be open, but now it's all covered and all, you know. And then the Velakkamadam or whatever, the lighted up walls, etc., can be lighted up, need not be lighted up, etc. Changed. Inside also we can have make a lot of changes. And even the Sri Govil we can make changes. Many temples are getting cold clocked and all those things. So changes are there. Everywhere we can make changes. Kshetra is a dynamic thing. It keeps changing. Whereas the Kshetra, the power inside the self, the Atman, the Ishvara inside the idol, that power is constant. It is not changed. And all the actions and their effects are in the Kshetra, not for the idol. And Kshetrajna is one who enables recognition of me and mine, etc. In the sense that Kshetra, the power inside is infinite supreme power. But when it could, you know, we give various shapes and forms and then attribute it with a lot of things. Attribution, characteristics, etc. are being given to that, and it makes an identity, that process, and it is therefore known as maybe Guruvayurappan temple or Shiva temple or Tirupati Bhagavan's temple and all those things. Various names and forms and attributes are assigned, and people talk about it, etc. It is because of the power combining with the particular kshetra. The power combining with the particular kshetra. If you take the idol out from Tirupati, simply that, and then you put it in some other temple, in some other place, you cannot call it as the Tirupati temple. I mean, that is connected with that identity there. Similarly, Guruvayurappan's idol can be taken, or that without any all the specializations that we give for that form. It is nothing but a small stone idol. That stone idol, if you take and put it in some other temple, if nobody, if we don't attribute it as Guruvayurappan idol, it is different from Guruvayur temple, isn't it? So all those things are outward things that are happening in the kshetra. And when that process, when it animates that particular kshetra, it becomes that Guruvayur temple. That is basically what we are talking about. The one who enables the recognition as me and mine is the kshetrajna. So sitting inside Guruvayur, that idol becomes Guruvayurappan, the kshetrajna, which gives that identity of Guruvayurappan. Self is the knower of the field in all fields. The knower is one, the known are many, the knower is different from the known, the knower is sentient, and the known is error. Knower is sentient, the power to help us understand something. And the things that we know are inert. They don't have life. Only when we know there is a meaning and a power given to it, then it becomes something. So, I mean, it is all Vedantic descriptions of these things. We don't have to look at that in detail further, but let us look at a visualization of it, the infinitude. If you consider the snake as the rope as the infinite, the rope is the infinite, but we project the snake on top of that rope and say that this is a snake. Our snake is a projected thing that goes on top of the infinite. Like that, what is happening is, in infinitude, on top of infinitude, we are projecting things, that the universal energies are projected on the infinite. The universe emerged. And then what? When the universe emerged, there were physical, chemical, and biological forces. When the universe emerged, there were physical, chemical, and biological forces. And this actually, when energizing a life form, what happens? Intellectual, mental, physiological functions started functioning. The physical, chemical, and biological process became intellectual, mental, and physiological functions within us. And when the intellectual, mental, and psychological forces started functioning, our organs and senses and actions started functioning with the qualities that are attributed to that functioning. The remembrances, forgetfulness, inferences, digestion, nourishment, etc. started working, and then powering the karma yogas, karmendriyas of moving and sensing. So the moving and sensing has been projected onto the organs, and the organs were projected on to the intellectual processes, which were projected on to the physical chemical processes, which are projected on to the universe. And that is how we, each one of us, limited by our own mind, we think that we are this entity. I am this. Who am I? I am this person, this physical thing. That physical, my Satish, for example, is being projected onto the, is actually projected on the infinitude, but we do not see the infinitude. We do not see this rope. We only see the snake. And I've become limited. I become the snake. I become limited with all this functioning being imposed onto that infinitude. This physical, chemical, biological processes, which is because of the life energy of the universe, giving me this biological, chemical, and processes working in a particular fashion, becomes the experiencer within me. And then it becomes my thought. And then it becomes my physical actions, moving and sensing. So see how this translation process occurs. This, we have been talking about this in several ways through several of those chapters. In chapter 7, 8, and 9, we have discussed these things in more detail there also, but this is again being repeated here as a kind of kshetrajna, energizing the kshetra, and which is now forming the projection on the infinitude, just like the snake is being projected on the rock. So this is basically what, so it's about the infinitude, the bottom line, infinitude giving us separate physical existence. I become a separate entity, the infinite powering me as prajna and giving me a separate existence, tapping the universal energies, creating the awareness through the mind and the senses, etc. And that is how we exist. This is the reason why several of the Upanishads talk about these things. In Chandogya Upanishad, that energy is talked about as one without a second, or that thou art, that you are that. Chandogya Upanishad says that you, actually I am not Satish, I am that universal power. Thou art. Kaivalya Upanishad says that alone you are. You are not the physical body, you are that, and that alone. Mandukya Upanishad says that Atman, as the Atman it comes within me, is the Brahman. I am Atma Brahma. That is what Mandukya Upanishad says. Chandogya Upanishad again says, all this verily is Brahman, everything is Brahman. This myself within, that is Brahman. So this, various ways in which Vedas, through the Upanishads, have declared the same phenomena. So it's like that. Now if you look at it through the scientific plane, it looks like something like that. There is this absolute self, or which is called as the infinitude, is called as the absolute self. Infinite, because it is infinite, absolute. It is not manifested. We cannot see it. It is not manifested. Before the universe was born, that energy was there, not manifested. That is why it is said that it is non-manifested. We cannot see our Atman. It is non-manifested. Pure, it is pure energy. It is Shivam. That then through the physical body, just as the universe emerged, through the physical body, our mind started functioning, manifested. At first, initially, as the various kinds of powers exploiting the physical forces, electromagnetism, gravity, nuclear forces, and all those things. So they are all governed by physical phenomena, physical laws. And then when it starts functioning within our physiology or life energy, as life energy, it is called as physiology. It is governed by biological laws and physical laws. Then through the individual mind as consciousness, as prajna, and that creating awareness and creating ego, intellect, mind, and memories. Buddhi, manasa, chittam, ahangaram. These four: ahangaram, buddhi, mana, chitta. Four things. It became that within us. So all of these, life as physiology, awareness, and these functioning of the memories, mind and intellect, and even the ego are governed by biological and physical laws. How are they influenced? They are influenced by the mind's functioning, thought, governed by thought. And we have several characteristics of mind. Ownership, taking ownership, intellection, imagination, integration, emotions, empathy, memory, forgetfulness, destructivity, productivity, creativity, selfishness, equanimity, devotion, focus, discrimination. We describe these kind of characteristics through different terms and terminologies and characteristics, and we try to understand them and try to control and either increase or decrease some of those things. We do all those things through thought power, governed by thought. So you see from the non-manifested how the energies became manifested through various forms, and then ultimately into thought power and into various kinds of this. All these are kshetras. The power of the self is activating that. So that to understand this is described in the 13th chapter. This listed out, actually. These things are listed out. And those characteristics of the kshetra is listed out in specific terms in various verses, and all of those things are taken and summarized here in this diagram. And all the different effects that we see is created because of nature, prakriti, sattva, rajas, tamo, gunas, knowledge, ignorance, and passion. And that created some experiences. That experiences are made possible because of the self. It is true within each one of us, the individual self, the mind controlled by goodness, passion, and ignorance, producing the world that we have. Our knowledge, ignorance, and passion create the world that we create. I mean, the sense that we interact with. The world that I interact with is completely different from the world that Anandji interacts with. Isn't it? That the world that Rajita Devi interacts is completely different from the world that with Sankita Naran interacts, isn't it? It is all because of the goodness, passion, and ignorance within me, producing the world and creating, giving me the experiences within me. So the self is giving you the experiences. The animated form of this kshetra is because of the self. Kshetra is mere physical thing. That is in the macro. Similarly, if you look at the macro, the world also is the same thing. The physical forces through rhythm, motion, and inertia produces the universe, which creates the universal phenomena. So, and we experience various kinds of phenomena in the world. So, it is the same macro and the micro. The samashti prapancham and the veshti prapancham. Exactly the same thing. Similar relationships exist. So this is what is described in the 13th chapter in various details, that the Krishna lists out the 24 items that create the kshetra. In terms of, from the infinitude, which is infinitude, it becomes the undifferentiated initially, and then it starts splitting into differentiation, different forces of nature. So the avyakta, undifferentiated, or avyagrata, the undifferentiated, becomes vyagrata, the differentiated. It is even in science, it talks about that initially there was a dust of energy, and that dust became separated out. Okay, photons and hydrogen split, and then started splitting, And then ultimately electromagnetic forces, gravity, and all those things got formed. Vyakrita, the differentiated, tangible forces happened. Then those forces gave rise to various kinds of things, including human beings on Earth, and then within Earth life forms. The life forms, we had buddhi. Second is therefore from the differentiated buddhi. First there is undifferentiated, and then we started differentiating, and intellect, buddhi, giving icha shakti. Third, ego, ahankara, and then the 5 great elements, subtle elements. 4 to 8, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 5, what are they? That is the world inside. The world inside is created. Imagine that. To understand it perfectly, you can look at that. The world inside, my mind. Inside the mind, I have the world. The world outside that I see and I interact with is one thing, which others can also witness. But the world inside me, nobody else can see it. Only I can see it. Isn't it? So, within my mind, let's say I have the various palm trees and the river flowing through. All those things are within me, isn't it? When the river I see outside is being reflected within me, and therefore within my mind, I have the river and the fire and the tree, etc. So what is it? It means that earth, fire, water, space, and all those things are right inside me also. So the earth, water, air, fire, space, etc. that are outside is also inside me in soft form or subtle form. That is what is called as Mahabhutas, the Panja Mahabhutas inside me. And how was this actually connected to the outside world? Earth, water, fire, air, the bottom, from the bottom up now. Earth, water, fire, air, space, Panchabhutas, sound, touch, taste, shape, and smell, which is through the Panchendriyas, and creating perception and motor controls. So this is how the physical world gets translated from outside to the mind, and the mind actually has got the capacity to conceive the Panchabhutas and create an inner world. So this is how the self is now differentiating into Kshetra, undifferentiated intellect, ego, Panchamahabhutas, and that Panchamahabhutas in the mind creating 9 to 13, hearing, sensing, tasting, seeing, and smelling, the Jnanendriyas, and perception centers, and the motor controls creating the actions in the world of speaking, holding, moving, procreating, and excreting, karmendriyas. But these karmendriyas are influenced by my mind's translation into desire, hatred, pleasure, and pain. Thus, actions are taking place. So this process is described in detail in the 13th chapter. Up to verse number 13, 1 to 13, 13 slokas describe this process, describe this differentiation. It is also called as Sankhya Yoga, analytical differentiation of knowledge. The first 13 verses of the Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Vibhaga Yoga differentiate the Kshetra and the Kshetrajna aspect, Kshetra aspects. And then from 14 onwards, the Kshetrajna aspects are brought in by saying that forces, the first forces that we have outside are devoid of the qualities of the senses. You know, the power to see is not there in the outside force. But the power to see, when it actually energizes me within me as life, and then gives me experiences of seeing, as the Kshetrajna experiences of seeing. It gives me the experiences of seeing. So the power to see is outside everywhere, but that power to see within my physical body gives me the experiences of seeing. Okay, you have to understand that. That is the process of how the self is actually within me, coming inside me and becoming the Kshetrajna. So we house the Kshetrajna. The physical body houses the Kshetrajna in that form. So forces are devoid of the qualities of the senses and organs, yet is the experiencer when it is within me. universal, pervasive, unattached, subtle, undivided, creator, sustainer, and annihilator. That is how that self within me resides. 14 to 18 talks about the several characteristics which are required to understand this, the subtle intelligence that is required to understand this. And thus seated in the heart of all beings as memory, forgetfulness, power to infer, power to digest, and power to nourish. We as an entity work with the Kshetrajna, and the Kshetra now becomes the individual. And it attaches us to the qualities with likes and dislikes, pleasure and pain, the feeling of they, me, my, and mine, our and mine, and all those things. Thus, becoming the experiencer. The whole process is thus described. This is what was actually listed out as a graphic earlier in WhatsApp group. Also, it is still available. You can have a look at that in detail. This is the Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga captured in one frame. And then towards the end, it talks about how to realize this self now. So, you know what? The Atman inside me is making me experience as the experiencer. That is the reason why I am saying this is mine, that is yours, and I like this, I do not like this, and all those things happen because of that. But the effect, the likes and dislikes, the pleasure and the pain, the anger and the happiness, etc., that effect, who is creating that effect? That is because of my nature. The experience of the anger, the experience of anger is given because of self. The effect of anger is created because of my nature. Do you understand that? That is the difference. This is what you have to think. The experience of anger is because of the self, and the specific effect of the anger is because of the effect, which is called as anger, is because of my qualities of my mind. So if we can clean the mind, the anger experience can be replaced with maybe compassion experience. You understand? That is how you should look at it. This is what Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga is telling us. The frustration within me is the experience. And why is the frustration created? The frustration is created because of the nature of my limited knowledge and my ignorance, and the passion working on it telling me that, setting some expectations. And I am not able to reach that expectation. Then what happens? I experience frustration. The experience of frustration is because of the self. But the effect of frustration is created because of the nature of my mind. So if I change the nature of the mind by setting lower expectations, my frustrations will become satisfaction automatically. This thought process is basically what needs to settle into our minds. And that is possible only when you understand this process. The jnana sets in. Jnana Yoga comes in. That is Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, starting to ignite that knowledge. This is the first step of that knowledge realization. And the process is what is, from 13th chapter, 24th verse to 30th verse. That 7 verses describe how to realize the self. Acquiring more and more knowledge, reflecting on that knowledge, and acting selflessly in the outside world. Completely devoted to that particular cause. So, knowledge, reflection, selfless action, and devotion are the processes through which you can acquire these glories of the mind, with which you can connect with the self. What are the glories of the mind? That is the Kshetra. Humility, modesty, innocence, patience, uprightness, service of the teacher, purity, steadfastness, self-control, absence of attachment to objects and senses, absence of egoism, and perception of sadness and happiness in birth, death, and such kind of differences, sickness and pain and sickness, etc. All those things, These understanding, these things of the capacity of the mind to actually express these things is basically what is enabling you to achieve these kind of goals. So those things are also described. Non-attachment, absence of selfish affections for offspring, spouse, home, and the like, and constant equanimity on the attainment of the desirable and the undesirable. Both desirable, not unduly happy, undesirable, not unduly unhappy, balanced mind. Unflinching devotion to the infinite self. Resorting to places of serenity so that you are not pulled apart. Distate for the society of the indiscriminate. Distate, that is salsangam, salsangatvam, avoiding dussangatvam. Constancy in self-knowledge. Don't ever have doubt on the self, power of the self. Having the capacity to make your mind clean. Realization of the end of the knowledge is the knowledge of the self. What is your ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is to understand that I am the self. And therefore, I am coexistence and expansion. Therefore, my whole duty to this world is coexist and expand. This is declared to be knowledge. And what is opposed to it is ignorance. Anything that is opposed to the fact that your duty, dharma, is coexistence and expansion. Opposite to that, your duty is selfishness, that is ignorance. And this knowledge of coexistence and expansion as your duty is the real knowledge. That is basically what is described in this chapter in such detail. Actually, we have to study this in greater detail, depth, reflect on it, and practice that. Reflect on it and practice that with the devotion, with utmost faith that, yes, this is what Gita says, and this therefore cannot be wrong. That conviction of the knowledge is basically what is. It will help you to connect with the experiencer as the self, and thus create experiences that are in tune with coexistence and expansion, infinitude. So this is the essence of Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. So if you look at it, in a sense, when I think that I am the body, mind, and the intellect, I'm limited. And when you actually start realizing I am the self and forget that I am the BMI, I become limitless, unbound. And I can lead a life of perennial peace and happiness. So that is it. I am BMI. This is what we all think on the left side. But what Bhagavad-Gita teaches is I am self. So that is wisdom. So I am not actually, the BMI is there, but I transcend the BMI to the world of wisdom. I am self. This is what we really are. That is what the intelligence, the wisdom of Bhagavad-Gita teaches us. Through this process of differentiating the Kshetra Kshetrajna, we start that process. The infinite self. We are the infinitude. See, all of us, each one of those circles that are coming up and going in the screen, you can consider as different people. Some people staunchly believe the BMI. So I become the small I, the small I. For some people, that belief has started rupturing and then becomes dotted lines and ultimately completely, that ignorance is destroyed and merges with that infinitude. The way, this is how the different people exist in this world. One second. Okay, sorry. There were some drawings that appeared. That's why I'm trying to read. Okay, so if you look at the way we live, can you place each one of us? I mean, in the sense for individually, if you look at this and then say, where am I on this? Which of those circles am I? Is something that you can start thinking. And then, am I completely BMI centric? Or I can forget my BMI egos and merge with the self at the right extreme. So left extreme is selfishness, right extreme is selflessness. In between, we all of us are in somewhere in between. Okay, that is a visualization for you to reflect on while you meditate or something, so that you make changes in your brain to start thinking and having the faith on the self, faith in the self, sorry, faith in the self. So where am I? Think about that. And when in such a case, look at this, this animation. Each individual, anywhere, I could be the third one or the fourth one or the fifth or the last one, whatever it is. Now, when our body goes away, that is when we actually pass away at death, what happens? The physical body merges with elements. And this is what remains. So you can see at the leftmost extreme, there is a red tinge that is left behind, which is all the expressions of your anger, passions, and such negative things that you left behind, the edges that you left behind. And on the right extreme, what is it? Nothing. Infinitude. Infinitude is what is left behind. In between, traces. So you can see that the traces of ego, traces of the effects of ego and your nature are left behind. Whereas selflessly existing in this world, the right extreme, karma yogi, coexistence and expansion is the power. He leaves behind infinitude, in the sense that there is nothing, he doesn't leave behind anything, he is infinitude. This is what our scriptures talk about as the state of moksha. Then there is no rebirth. That is what he said. Whereas the other traces that are left behind will start finding expressions in similarly oriented body, mind, and intellects. See, it's like that in similarly minded intellects. They will find expressions. But for the infinitude, nothing. It is bliss, infinite. There is no more birth and life, death, etc. Moksha is attained. This is just an illustration of the whole philosophy of birth, death, cycle, samsara that I have shown here. When you actually start understanding the infinitude, the self, and then exist in this world in pure coexistence and expansion, you reach the state of infinitude from which there is no return to this world of hope and despair, life and death, samsara. So it's about what we have seen is about the kshetra, the physical thing, being energized by the infinite self, so that we have a self inside, which is the Atman. As the kshetrajna, it is sitting there with the body. Initially it was like this, and I cannot separate out the infinitude, that is for sure. But for the sake of illustration, without the self, it is physical dead body. That's it. But with the self, I have the self, Atman, working as the kshetrajna within me. See, that's what is happening. Okay, so now just to finish, I'm just spending a few minutes on um, an application in the in the outside world. How we can apply this knowledge in, let's say, in an organization that we're working over. You know, for any physical thing, the core is what the self is. For me, as a physical body, human being, the core is the self. And the field of expression is my physical body, mind, intellect, physical body. Anger, frustrations, and all those things are fields of expression. But the core is what? I'm the self. In a global context, in an organizational context, we can similarly talk about this as the core as a kind of global context, or a sustainable business context can be the core of an organization. That becomes the self of the organization, which is normally measured by the business intent, the customer connection, and also the employee experience. Three things should be the sustainable business context, should be the core of any business, such that that organization, which is the field of expression, becomes a successful entity. Okay, let us just go through that. The organizational self. I will call it as the organizational self. That organizational self is a unique and inspiring context which is guided by the idea or the business intent, the customer connection, and the employee experience. And the organization itself is composed of various elements of kshetra, which is, the monetary resources, the material resources, the people, human resources, and the functions and activities or the processes, etc. So the finance, infrastructure, processes, and people constitute the kshetra elements, driven by the organizational self, the context, that unique and inspiring context that actually helps for the organization to be agile, innovative, and growth oriented. So you can see that the experiencer is the actually organizational self, plus the field. Providing, the experiencer is now providing the experiences of agility, innovation, and growth, or intrinsic energization, connecting with the context. So this is the Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. If we really understand that, we can also apply it in an organizational context as a leader there, and be able to energize the organization through the context, the understanding the self. So understanding the self of the organization is the most important aspect. What is that? The business intent, idea, logic, the customer connection. How do you actually connect? How does your work, your service, your product, your project, your whatever it is, project, product, or service, whatever, how does it connect with the customer? You should understand that. We should understand that as a leader, as not only as a leader, even as an employee, as an executive there. You should be, if you understand the idea, the business intent, what is the intention of the business? I have a product. It is not about, the business. Every business will have one particular intent, which is the bottom line. I'm not talking about the bottom line. Yes, bottom line has to be taken care of, without which the organization cannot exist. But much more than that, there is something called as the critical path of an organization. And what is that? One is the business intent. What is, for example, certain organizations, they define the mission, vision, etc. Through that, the mission, the business intent will be declared through a vision, mission statement. No, the thing is, as an executive, as a leader, as an mere worker or employee itself, if every individual is able to connect with that business intent, then how does this intent or this product or project or application or customer service, etc., connect with the customer? Can you actually play the role of the connection to the customer and make it better, faster, smarter, smoother, etc.? Can I do that? I'm touching the core. And then, of course, as an organizational leadership, management, etc., they should also look at the employee experience. What does the employee working there gain? Is it the salary and bonuses and things only? Or do these people working there get a kind of fulfillment, feeling of fulfillment and satisfaction. As the organizational leader, if I am able to provide that kind of an inspiring experience for every employee, then I am touching the organizational core. For that, of course, the employees also should have this customer connection, business connection, and all those things, as I talked about in the previous way. So when all these three things work together in one synergy, then we have the organization that is exhibiting agility, innovation, and phenomenal growth. This is what Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga is telling us by describing what this Kshetra is and what the experiencer is. So the experiences, the process of experiencing is called as the experiencer actually. The process of experience. What is that? How does the self, the context, the business context, the customer connection, or the experience, the employee experiences, how does that, evolve, give a kind of, successful ambience to the organization? That is the experience. And the effect is the agility, innovation, and the growth that happens. So all this happens because, everywhere we have to combine knowledge, passion, and ignorance, maximizing the constructive styles, knowledge through knowledge, optimizing our aggression and passion through, the process of optimization, and eliminating the passive style. So here, constructive style is knowledge, aggressive style is our passion, and passive style is our tamas, ignorance. You have to control that, these things, into creating a experience of expanding, productive and enriching environment. This is a practical way in which if Bhagavad-Gita's knowledge can be expanded into our working world, and then how do you all do all these things? We have actually elaborated on this also in Karma Yoga. In the Karma Yoga, we described how we can maximize our constructive styles, how we can optimize our aggressive past styles, and how we can eliminate our passive styles. We have discussed this in detail in the Karma Yoga. So that was initially discussed, first 6 chapters. That the knowledge now, why that process will help you to become a better star performer, or a organization to be a star organization, a constructive organization. That the details of that connection and the details that make it up is actually what is being given in the Jana Yoga segment now. Okay, so the next now, if you look at it, one of the important things here is this. What is this? Sorry. One of the important things here is falling down. Knowledge, passion, and ignorance. The nitty-gritty of knowledge, passion, and ignorance. How can you differentiate knowledge? How can you passion and ignorance? That is now through another vibhaga, process of vibhaga, differentiation. That is called as Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. So therefore, that happens to be the 14th chapter in the Bhagavad-Gita. See how it is well developed, connected, and expanded, the knowledge. So, Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, we will summarize in the next month's session on 10th of October. Until that time, we will, I will keep posting things that you can reflect on and then comment or whatever, Q&A discussions and all. Nothing happens. I just keep on posting. I feel sometimes I'm doing it a one-sided thing, but still that's okay. But if at all, you get time to reflect on it, put your thoughts in. It will be helpful to others also. Okay. Before we go into some more discussions, Anandji's enlightenment also we will listen to. Before that, let us just sing the Gita Arati and the concluding mantra, and then we'll have the discussions. Okay. So let me just stop the recording also, because